Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I'd like to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we convene our third of five sessions on what we're calling the Adulting Alliance, which is really organizing around how we empower our young people to lead more vital lives. Now, today, we're going to be exploring sexual intimacy and empowerment. But before we do that, I want to continue my commentaries each day on what's going on in Washington, D.C. as the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives consider the UAP Disclosure Act as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, which will embark the U.S. government on a 7-year process of disclosure about all the evidence that the U.S. government and its contracting corporations have accumulated concerning the UFOs, now called UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, over the last 75 years, 80 years since the Second World War. Today, I want to just comment on an inquiry that has come through multiple times about how prevalent UFO sightings are, and whether they just happen in the United States or North America or elsewhere. And I want to just make sure that everybody understands that this has been a global phenomenon. Actually, the first major UFO sighting of the 20th century happened in Italy in 1933. It was a time when the Mussolini government, the fascists, were in control of the Italian government. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis had just taken control of Germany. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere in northern Italy, a UFO crashed. And the Italian police and army looked at it and they had no idea what it was. And they assumed that it was German. So they contacted the German authorities, and the Germans sent down a team of military and scientific personnel, and they couldn't figure it out either. But it was clearly neither Italian nor German nor any other nation that they could conceive of. But they were preoccupied with other priorities, as we all know, and they stuck the craft in a warehouse. And there it remained until shortly after the end of World War II, when the U.S. Army took control of Italy. And one of the first things the U.S. military did was go to the warehouse, seize the alien craft, and ship it back to the United States. It was in 1966 in Melbourne, Australia, where there was another mass sighting, this time in a primary school outside of Melbourne, Australia, where several hundred children and a number of teachers saw a major craft in the sky descending into a field right by the school. And a number of them ran over to look at it, and it was there for a while, and then it ascended and disappeared, but it caused a major consternation in the school. And of course, major denials by the Australian government. And then in the 1970s, there was a sighting again with children in Zimbabwe, 61 children, ages 6 through 12 in Zimbabwe, who not only saw an alien craft land in a nearby clump of trees, but when they went to investigate, very curious as children often are, they reported that there were these rather short alien beings dressed in black. that were coming out of the aircraft, and a number of the children said that they interacted, and then the craft disappeared. There was a very famous incident in Suffolk, in England, at a U.S. nuclear weapons base, which housed the largest concentration of nuclear weapons anywhere in Europe. And it was subsequently shut down, but in 1980, it was a heavily guarded base with extensive surveillance. And it was on December 25th, actually on Christmas of 1980, that several of the guards saw lights in the nearby forest and went out to investigate, and were frightened out of their wits by what they observed, and went back and got some reinforcements and came back out. And over the next couple of days, in different places around the airbase, including right over where they kept the nuclear weapons, this alien spacecraft made its appearance and then disappeared. And one of the most common denominators of all these, and scores, hundreds, thousands of other sightings, it's estimated by Richard Dolan that there's probably 10,000 sightings every year around the world. And most of them go unreported. And one of the reasons is because the most common denominator for the government and institutional response to anybody saying that they saw a UFO or an alien being is ridicule and ostracization, and in some cases, persecution. Colonel David Grush, in congressional testimony in July in the House Government Operations Committee, even testified that there's been murders as the government agencies have sought to keep people with direct evidence of the UFO phenomenon quiet. And when they haven't been, they have mysteriously been killed. So the process that we're now in of an actual bill to disclose all this evidence gathered by the United States government and other nations. There's been sightings in Russia. There's been sightings in China, sightings in Japan, sightings in Brazil, in Argentina, in Chile, in Mexico, major encounters with UFO phenomena, and in many cases, alien intelligences. It's been very closely held. And there's one example in Mexico, 1974, where a craft was tracked across the southern part of the United States. It crossed into Mexico. Apparently, it crashed into a small airplane, came down, and within just a few hours, the U.S. had sent a special SWAT team, commando team, to retrieve the aircraft over the objections of the Mexican government. So the powers that be have been focused on any information that they can get about the UFO phenomenon, keeping it not only secret, but mounting a campaign starting back in the 1940s to make it seem that if you believed in UFOs, you were actually crazy. And that's why there's been such ridicule about anybody who reports UFO phenomena. It's part of a government strategy to keep the public unbalanced, keep the information both secret, but also distorted, so that no one is quite confident whether they exist, whether they don't exist, and what the truth of the matter is. That's what they want us to think. But what we're dealing with is the most closely held secret in history. It is considered even more secret than nuclear weapons technology. And the reason is that, as I've indicated before, if you can reverse engineer this technology, you can garner cosmic capacities of space travel, time travel, weapon systems that are unimaginable by today's understanding of physics. And that is what the US government and other governments have been doing in the most closely held covert operation in history. And now there's a preponderance of evidence that is beginning to be accumulated. There's more and more people inside the intelligence agencies, inside the military, inside the government, who know what the truth is and are beginning to come out. And so what we're dealing with in Washington this week and next week, in fact, the conference between the Senate and the House is taking place right now, right across the street from me, here in Washington, D.C., to begin the process of determining whether, in fact, the UAP Disclosure Act makes it through the eye of the needle. And so Georg is going to be putting in to the chat box a very quick 2-minute video that I hope everybody will take the time to see and then send out to everybody you know. It's a call to action to contact your congressional representative, to contact your senator. I realize that many, if not most of the people listening to this broadcast may be outside the United States. I understand that, but I would be 100% sure that your government, wherever you are, is also hiding information about UFOs, because it's a ubiquitous global phenomenon. And we need to ensure that moving forward, there is transparency, there's democratic access, and that the information and the intellectual property pertaining to cosmic technology is not left in the hands of the major defense aerospace corporations and the military, but belongs by right to the people of whatever country the cosmic technology has been found. So I'll be talking about other things as we go forward, but please, US citizens, take action to press the government in this moment to pass the UAP Disclosure Act. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to Humanity Rising. And now we'll turn to our subject for today. And for that, I want to welcome Dehanna Rice, who is a polarity therapist, a hypnotherapist, and a breath coach and a life coach, and who's convening this program. So Dehanna, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Wow, that's a lot of information to process. I'm just trying to feel into that cosmic intelligence coming here at a time where we are so in need of coming as a unified field together, you know, as humans. It's such a powerful time to be living on the planet. Thank you so much. And protection. We put lots of protection around you. Some white light and blue healing energy for all of Congress to get their act together. So
one other thing, Dehanna, I just want to note that if you look back of me by the picture, you'll see 2 orchids. And those were very generously brought to the office last night by Harriet Crosby, who felt that I needed a little bit more beauty in my background. So I want
very
to
nice,
Harriet, and thank you all for your attentiveness to the small details of our presentation on Humanity Rising.
Well, you're beautiful, and those are beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Wow. I am so honored to be a part of this community. I am on the third day of one of the dreams that I've had for 10 years to bring support to emerging adults, 18 to 25-year-olds, because of the cantankerous environment that they are living in every day. And I am a polarity therapist. That is an energy-based work. The original energy work on the North American continent by Dr. Randolph Stone started in the 1950s in Chicago. So if you want to learn more about it, look at Polarity Therapy. We are so honored today. I'm going to go into the introduction for Mr. Sun. Everybody's very excited to hear on sex and intimacy. And we're going to bring just some awareness about this particular subject that is very sensitive in nature. A part of the discussion, which Shay and I will be having, will include some coercion in the sexuality of the youth. And so we want to make sure that our audience members know that we are going into a sensitive area. If you feel triggered, we want you to make sure that you take care of yourself. So today, to start, I want to start with a little bit more focusing, because I always start out the program with a little bit of breath work, relaxing the nervous system. This is so important, this part of the work that I offer for young and anyone, when you're really accumulating so much frustration or emotional baggage, so to speak, in the physical body, we need to release it through different ways. And so I'm going to do that and still do a little breath work, but we're going to do it with movement today. The first thing I want you to do is just unbusy your hands, put your feet flat on the floor. We are going to do this all from our chair, even though sometimes I do some of this breath. It's a specific breath. It's called 4462. It's the funniest thing in China. You know, they still just do it with numbers. And it's a breath work that has helped suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. There's actually a story. My mentor, Dr. Richard Brown in New York, is a psychopharmacologist from Columbia University. And once, I'm just going to tell a little story, he was working with a mental health facility, and there was lots of schizophrenics in the group. And he was doing this movement and breath, and the director just all of a sudden blurted out, "This is bullshit." And he was like, you know, he knew that he was coming back in 6 weeks. He said, "Okay, if you think that it's not credible, just go with me in these 6 weeks to do this simple movement, and then we'll discuss it when I return in 6 weeks." And when he returned, the director was like, just so moved. He's like, "This takes away homicidal ideation and suicidal ideation. It's just amazing." So this is something for the youth, because we know that the data right now is astronomical, what's going on with the suicidal rate. So I wanted to address that with an actual practice. Of course, this is about releasing anger, frustration, things that are in our energy and also in the body, holding. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to just raise your shoulders up to your ears and hold them tight, 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 putting stress kind of in that space in order to release stress, and let go. Again, bringing those shoulders up. This is the traps, all of our shoulders holding the energy of all of our world right now is so much obligation, so much responsibility, and release. You see how my neck is starting to release. I'm moving in kind of a figure 8. My head is just moving as if I had a pencil on my chin and I'm making a figure 8. Just feel that release, letting the head release. Now we're going to make some sound before I do the actual 4462 that I mentioned. And this one is just, it's called a bellows breath. Because of the energy that's in our bodies that's accumulating, and we're talking about emotional instability, sometimes overwrought with anger, rage, our whole organ system sometimes are related to the holding patterns of different emotions, like the liver holds anger, the gallbladder holds rage, old anger, and the hips hold, or the pelvic basin holds frustration. So we're going to bring that energy up, and we're going to raise our hands, taking a nice deep breath. And then we're going to drop our hands and make a sound. Ha! So you're raising your hands up, breathing in. Ha! Again, breathing in. Ha! Breathing in. Ha! One more time, breathing in. Ha! Now, feel the change. If you want to lower your eyes, you can feel the change in the mind. Feel the change in the body. The energy is starting to move in a different rhythm. Wonderful. Now, the next one is the 4462. And we're going to breathe in for 4 counts, breathing in as your hands come up in front of your body. And then as they stretch, your hands are facing the ceiling in a flat palm. And that's where you hold your breath for 4 counts. So I'm just demoing the movement first. And then for 6 counts, you relax your hands, that comes down in front of your body, and you hold your belly and the lower dantian, which is 3 inches below your belly button, for 2 counts. So we're going to do that together. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold the belly, 2. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath as if clouds are just passing by gently, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2. Breathing in again, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2. Last one, breathing in gently, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2. Now we're going to do just a little bit of that coherent breathing rhythm before I introduce Shay. Great. And we're going to do it this time with a little movement like we just did with our hands. Breathing in on the high tone, 3, 4. Breathing out, the arms stretch out to the horizons along the side. Breathing in gently, 3, 4. Breathing out gently, 3, 4. Breathing in through the nose, 3, 4. Breathing out through the nose, 3, 4. Breathing in, really feeling that rhythm, gently bringing in the air. Breathing out, stretching the arms out. That heart field is expanding. Breathing in gently, 3, 4. Breathing out gently, 3, 4. Now feeling your arms as if a puppet is just pulling them up with the forces of heaven and And an energy is pulling them down with the earth energy, drawing them down. Breathing in effortlessly as if you are being breathed. Really feeling that shift. Breathing in, the arms float up from uncertain heavenly energy, and the arms float down, being pulled down to the earth. Breathing in gently, and breathing out. One more time, breathing in, and breathing out. Just feel that energy that's moving now. Start breathing in whichever rhythm you'd like to. Coming back. If you want to lower your eyes, feel any change in the mind and any change in the body. I don't know if you can hear, I've got a leaf blower outside my window. Okay, everyone. Shay Sun, what an amazing human being I have encountered with this particular person. We met at Unity in Marin, that is a Unity church, and we got into a conversation about happiness. That just enthralled me because I'm so into positivity. And that's how we started our relationship. He had a book that he had written on happiness, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about our encounter as we discuss that. But Shay Sun is an award-winning educator, seasoned coach, and author. He's dedicated to fostering committed intimacy. His vision is a world where greater intimacy thrives. He integrates modern neuroscience and ancient Chinese philosophy to guide committed couples in understanding the dynamics of safety, significance, and pleasure. Shay's coaching heals the loneliness and disconnection stemming from their lack of understanding the differences between male and female sexuality. So important. He believes that stable relationships not only benefit couples, but also children and society. So I'm welcoming Shay to the floor.
Good
Hi.
morning, Dehanna. Good morning, everyone. I'm Humanity Rising.
Good morning. I just wanted to mention about your really impetus to help couples that have been together in your coaching work. I know that we're focused on our adulting population, but I just wanted to bring everyone's attention in this group because the after chat on Monday, they kept him in the after chat in this group for quite a while discussing this issue of intimacy. So I know that there's a program that you want to present with the 3 questions. So maybe we can just start that. I'm going to stay on screen with Shay today, and we're going to dialogue. That's the best way to get this genius talking.
Oh, thank you, Dehanna. Well, let me build the greater container. So in the chat, I actually put my vision and mission and values because that actually holds it all. And so the vision statement says a world where couples bond through lifelong lovemaking. That got cut off. The mission is to rekindle sexual communication and intimacy between long-term partners, and the values: wise, aware, bold, and authentic. And so wise is develop trusted communication, aware is understanding desires and challenges, bold is engage in new experiences, and authentic is own your own sexual needs. So the reason why
hold on 1 second, Shay. They can't see you for some reason.
See that? Oh, you know what? I must have put it on hosts and panelists again. So let me go ahead.
Okay, yeah, let's make sure they can see you talking.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. Let me make sure that it says to everyone. Let me do that again.
Otherwise, you're this disembodied voice in the sky. Okay, everybody sees him. Yay.
Oh, really? Can you not see me? Oh, yeah.
Yay, they do see you.
Oh, they do see me.
Yeah,
Okay.
who talks, it will come on screen. I'm not, I
Okay.
mean, I'd like to be on here, but I don't know how we can do that, both of us on the screen at the same time. We'll
Yeah,
see.
so I want to just have people understand the reason why the lifelong lovemaking is so important to me. So, in my pursuit of researching happiness for a year, I came across the studies. I believe it was Harvard was the university that did a longevity study on happiness, and a lot through so many studies, they say that it's your quality of relationships. That's what really is about your at the foundation. It's not how much money you make. It's not all these other factors. Is really about your connections. And because of that, I started thinking even in terms of my own life and like what really, really matters to me. And I'm really into bonding, bonding in terms of like this one person in my life that's really, really important to me. And I shared that on Monday in terms of like when I was 18, I was in a 2.5 year relationship, right? And then when I was at 25, I had already been married for 3 years. And so um, when we look at life is full of changes, right? So like if you I know that you in Humanity Rising, there was a whole conversation about the I Ching, the book of changes. There's this when I was in seventh grade, I was so into mythology, and there's this riddle of the Sphinx, and I believe I shared this with you, but I'm going to share it with the rest of Humanity Rising. But this man sees the Sphinx, and the Sphinx is gonna let him pass if he can answer a riddle. And the riddle is what has 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening. And the answer was a human being, right? Because it's four legs in the morning is when you crawl, 2 in the afternoon is when you walk on your 2 legs, and then 3 is when you walk with a cane. So when we look at emerging adults, this 18 to 25, there's this 7 year span that is so foundational. And so when we look at 1 to 17, I mean, in terms of like, when you're more dependent, right, on your family. And then we look at after 25, from 26 and beyond, right? I know you want to live to 120, right? So from like 6 and beyond, you think in terms of like you have a lot of time left to live and to enjoy that quality of life. So the question is, in the terms of the emerging adults, what does that look like? How can we build this solid transformational space where we're getting as much as we can out of life? And so the 3 questions, the title of this event, this conversation is Unlocking Sexual Intimacy, 3 key questions. So I want to first begin with the first 2, because your brain every few seconds is asking itself 2 questions. And the 2 questions are, am I safe and do I matter? And this is not even just about sexual intimacy, this is just in general, and this is by Dan Siegel. And so because the brain is asking itself these questions, and we know that thinking is the mind speaking to itself, then that conversation that happens in our brain, we bring into also the bedroom or even prior to the bedroom when we first meet someone. So that's the reason why these questions are so, so important. The third question, which I will touch upon later on, but is, am I feeling pleasure? And that one specifically related to intimacy. Yeah. So the reason why this is important for the 18 to 25 years old is because the fact that they're building self-awareness and self-agency, right? So they're getting self-aware about, what are their preferences, what are their needs, and what do they really care about? Because what we really want is we want people to make choices, like true, authentic choices. So that way it's not based off of like just pure compliance or coercion and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And those are so basic to humanness. Humanness
Right.
is, am I safe?
Yeah.
And we will go into the coercion part of this, but I
Yeah.
think the thing about these young people, they're leaving home for the first time. They don't have that umbrella, so to speak, or that support system from their family, and they're on their own to make good decisions. And how do they? Some of them don't really even understand when they're in compromised positions. And feeling safe and setting boundaries. Also, they're developing their identities at this time, right? They're like, do I like a woman or do I like a man? Or what is my sexuality at this time? It's all budding and growing.
Right, exactly. And then when you think in terms of like adolescence and when we develop, right? When we develop into our sexual beingness, oftentimes it's not something that people in our lives or even our parents or other people are comfortable talking about all the time. And so we really do lack education. And then the education that we do get in schools sometimes can also be very technical, very biological, but it doesn't take under consideration the psychological or the intimate and the pleasure part of it all. And so people are left to figure things out on their own. And on their own demise, what that means that they're going to be getting it from their friends or getting it from online. And then we know that entertainment is different than reality. And so this is why it's so, so important that those of us who are older, that have already gone through our lives, or so much of our life, that that we bring something to these young people and give them another perspective. After my divorce, I was talking to a friend, and he says, Shay, the most important thing that you need to know now that you're divorced, because he knew that had only been with my wife or my ex-wife my whole life, and here I am at 40 something, right? And he says the most important thing is safety. A woman will not open up if she does not feel genuinely safe. And that was probably the first time that I really, really processed. That was before I even learned about these these two questions about the Dan Siegel questions. Am I safe and do I matter? So yeah, so this is the reason why for me it's been a learning journey. I'm still learning, by the way. Like, I'm not arrived at all. The more I learn, I have like 50 books on sex and relationship, and the more I learn, the more I feel like I don't know anything. And so I want you to know that this is based off of this ongoing thing as I share this with my clients and with my friends and family and things like that. It has been a spectacular, exciting journey.
Well, you make it that way, Shay, because I've learned more about your knowledge of this subject than any book I've read throughout my history as well. And it's so fascinating the way our brains work.
Yes.
The woman brain, the male brain. It's just a fascinating study in regards to sexuality.
Yeah, they say that if I passed away and there was a cadaver of me, they could tell that my brain is a male brain, but they couldn't tell that I was Asian. So that's how different it is between like males and females of the brain. There is some structural differences, and so yeah, it's amazing. So
what do you think they are? Because I think the audience, I'm curious. I know I was curious.
Yeah,
what are the differences?
The main difference, I would say, is the fact that the corpus callosum, which is the fiber in between connecting the left and right hemisphere, it's thicker than in women. And so because it's thicker than women have a lot more access to the right hemisphere, which means that when it comes to emotional intelligence, empathy, and also language. So when a person has a stroke, a male, if they get a stroke in their left hemisphere, they actually lose a lot of their language, while a female can just borrow from the right hemisphere. So, and because the women are more emotionally intelligent, they have more wisdom in terms of how to access their community. And we know the fact that when we talk about loneliness and things like that, so much of it is about connection. So that's why really, like, men need to admire women more, and women need to have pity on men more, knowing the fact that they're not fully using both cores of their brain. Let's think in terms of like computer processing things. So sometimes when a man says like I can't find something, it actually could be the fact that the woman's brain is wired differently. They can see things that men cannot always see. So this is the reason why working together as a male and female, it's like the yin and the yang coming together is so important. So yeah.
Fascinating.
I do want to mention something before I get into the three questions about the emerging adults.
Yeah.
So because the attitudes towards premarital sex has changed so much since especially the 60s with the advent of the sexual revolution, and then also when it comes to the pill, and there's a lot more access for women to control their bodies, right, in terms of when they're going to have children. And like I said before, that so much of it is about experimentation at this stage because we learn through, trial and error, right? And that 2/3 of these emerging adults have had sex with people that they were not dating. So when we're talking about hookup cultures and things like that, this is a really important thing to understand because it does influence when you have sex with someone, the oxytocin is raised so high. There's an exchange of energy, there's an exchange of something. So this is the reason why the Chinese say the fact that sex is medicine, but sex is also can be a poison. So think about food can be nourishing, but you can also get food poisoning, right? So I think being really mindful of that. And the other thing is the fact that during this age, they're actually becoming less influenced by peer pressure than they were in high school. So there is a more going into oneself when it comes to their own sexuality, about their own understanding and motivations. So that's really—
And their individuation.
Yes, exactly. And so, of course, our individualization is who we are. But then if we're constantly making decisions based off what other people are telling us what is, then either a man is saying that the only way to be a man is if I act this way, or a woman says the only way for me to actually get the man to like me is if I do X, Y, and Z. I mean, so this is the reason. So this is from my Human Sexuality Today textbook that they use in academic circles, right? Like college and PhDs. But this is a college student saying this. I now make my own choices and give my own opinions without being intimidated about what someone else might think. But most of all, I have stopped confusing sex with the attention I was striving for. That's really important. For example, I used to think that if I gave him sex, then that means he must like me or is my friend. So this is again, that I make my own choices. In Adulting Alliance, we want to make sure that we empower young lives, and we want to empower them when they're not sure, when they get have this challenge of not sure who they are. The opportunity is to get them to know themselves even more.
And not ostracize them if they don't participate in this hookup culture.
Yes.
Even all the way back to the 70s when I was young, there's so much advertising and so much in the visual world that shows that we're sexual beings and you want to like jump on board for that. But as a woman, it was like, I don't want to give that away. It's sacred to me. I want to be in love if I'm going to give that away. And then I had friends that were taking the pill and just, hanging out with fake IDs in the clubs and dating older guys. And so it's still happening for the advertising. Our world is advertised a very fluent sexuality.
Yes. And I think because it's that way, and I think it's always been that way, but now because of our technology and because we're very capitalistic and things like that, we really want to be able to know what is coming into our consciousness. Because what we want to do is we want to ground things into a vision and into our values. Because that's just basic coaching one-on-one, right? Like I'm a trained coach, and so knowing what is it that you want in your lifespan, and what are some values that are going to ground you. Because really what you want to do is you want to have the most pleasure you can throughout your lifetime, and not just like short term and then like that's it. So like for me, like I'm wearing this yin yang right here. Is actually an empty urn. It's a little mini urn. And I wear this to remind myself that one day I'm going to be ash. So if one day I'm going to be ash, then how then do I live now? Right? What is the overall vision of my life? And for me, intimacy, lovemaking, long-term partnering, all that is so important to me. It's like a foundation for who I am.
But let me just, I'm curious about, because there's no judgment. These are young emerging adults, right? Yeah. They're becoming adults. And when you become an adult, show up and make a decision how you want to live your life. There's no judgment if a male or female wants to play the field, so to speak, and get multiple experiences sexually. That's their choice. They're adults, right?
Right. So at that point, then it's just an issue that they're actually truly making conscious choices.
Right.
And the flip side of that, because actually what some college girls right now may feel pressure to actually, because of the fact that other women are having sex more freely, that they feel that they also have to participate. And so then, even like you had mentioned about in your own experience, that they actually want to save themselves, right? And wait until they're not necessarily married, but at least until they're in love. So this is where I think the whole spectrum has to be looked at. But again, it's about consciousness.
Isn't it the oxytocin hit? That's the elixir of the draw to have a sexual intimate relationship is like, wow, I felt like, my brain exploded, or, my emotions were so heightened that something's different in my beingness.
Yeah, so there's three brain systems that we're looking at. So one is your sex drive, and there's actually even more recent research that maybe it's not even a full drive from a science perspective. But the idea is the fact that both men and women have testosterone and estrogen. Men just have it more, right? And so because of that, when you do get into a sexual encounter with someone, it is a raising of the testosterone level. And so because of that, it's important to understand that that idea of that testosterone being released is a part of that. I want to be with someone. I'm attracted. So think in terms of like animals and mating strategy, right? When an animal is in heat. The other brain system deals with romantic love. And romantic love is about novel experiences. It's really about releasing of dopamine. And so it's that, oh, that's so exciting. That's what when women say, so I didn't understand for the longest time, even when I was married, my wife at the time would say things like, I want to have more romance. Now that I understand the brain more, I understand what that means. It means the stimulation of the mind. Because
Right.
ultimately your greatest sex organ is your brain, not your genitals, right? And so yeah. And then the
But
third, yeah, go ahead.
but the thing is that men sometimes are categorized that they're thinking with the wrong brain, the wrong
Right.
head,
Yeah.
and women are wanting that eroticism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know
Right.
that
So
that's
this is what,
much more.
right. So you're at that time, you're talking about like what's stereotypical, right? So stereotypically, we would say that men are really, really driven by their sex drive. That's true in the sense the fact that we're talking about sexual cues. For a man, sexual cues are very like specifically body parts, right? The four body parts. I hope this is okay to say this on like this is like so here's the 40 body parts. The four body parts of the men are sexual cues for men, and the fourth one is shocking, by the way, even the people who did the research. So four body parts are one, the chest, and this is for both straight men and gay men, is the chest. The second is the rear, right, the butt, and then the third is feet. And this is across culture. The feet is like one of those things that, which is interesting because coming from a Chinese culture, like the whole feet binding thing, right? Like, but feet across board, both for straight men and gay men. Feet is the number three, and the fourth one that is the most shocking is actually the male member, that there's a sexual cue in the men's
I
mind.
think you can say penis on
Yes, yes, for penis. Yes.
Humanity Rising.
I was going to say the jade stock using the Dallas terminology, but yeah. So
Wow,
those,
but that's number 4.
yeah, that's
Chest,
number 4.
butt, and feet are before the male genitalia.
Yeah, in terms of what turns them on. So some people think that because when an animal sees another animal with an erect penis, they know the fact that there's a female close by who is who's fertile. So these are all cues, sexual cues.
Right.
In the same way that when we eat something sweet, we know the fact that our subconscious mind knows the fact there's glucose. So think of sexual cues as like mating strategy, because then it takes away some of the judgment. The woman's so this one author says the fact that that the male brain is more like Elmer Fudd from the Looney Tunes, the cartoon. It's like I see a rabbit and I'm gonna go and shoot. It's very like this trigger happy, right? On the other hand, women are more psychological cues, and the psychological cues deals with long-term strategy. Is this person going to help me to be able to raise my young if I do get pregnant? So instead of the Elmer Fudd, it's more like the detective agency. And it's the detective agency that also uses other detective agencies. That's why women talk to other women to see whether or not the guy is actually honest. And that's why they say that women's brains are highly sophisticated. It would be harder to create an AI that's a woman with all the detective agency versus the man. A man is very like scan breast, scan butt, scan feet. Like they're just like scanning for things. But the women, on the other hand, it's very sophisticated. Some people theorize that because women's brains are so sophisticated is what required men to actually become smarter themselves, which is hilarious. I'm like, wow, talk about the appreciation for women. And so then the other thing is women are like longtime financial advisors to themselves. They really wanted to see like, if I do this, what's going to happen. Now, keep in mind though, so this is where the nuance comes in. When you're actually looking at within the relationship, like a person's already together with the other person, actually men desire romance a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's according to the surveys and things like that, which is fascinating because sometimes we just go by stereotypes about what women want. And then also when it comes to like sexlessness in marriages, that women often are the ones, because women's skin is 10 times more sensitive. And so women really want to be touched. So when a woman is not touched when in a long-term relationship, it feels like neglect. It feels like abandonment. It feels very painful. So after my divorce, a lot of women who talked to me about why they were either separated from their husbands, they hadn't had intimacy in 10 years or 6 years, or even my friends were dating and who hadn't had it for like 3 years. I mean, there is a devastation that happens because everyone wants to be desired, right? And in a sexual way as well. And so it's really important. Yeah. And then go ahead.
No, that's so like I totally am, I've experienced that with the demise of my marriage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Towards the end of my marriage was like that too. I was sleeping
and I was with him, but I felt so lonely.
Yes.
I was like, I'm here with you, but I feel so lonely. It was the first time in my life that, it's devastating.
Exactly. So I think that when we talk about the loneliness epidemic and things like that, when you're alone and you're lonely, then your brain can process it. I think, I mean, it hurts. But when you're with someone that claims to love you, and then you feel alone, it's like being in the same bed, but everyone's turning towards the walls and not towards each other. It's a very, very sad feeling. And that's why I do want to get to, there was a third brain system. And then after that, I do want to get to the 3 questions. The third brain system. So the first one was a sex drive, dealing with your testosterone level, and then the second one is romantic love, which is the dopamine, which is even just doing novel things. It doesn't mean the fact that you have to get a swing or pole or like things like that. Although positions and things like that are great too. But even like going to a different restaurant, you're just trying to activate. Like we're all both trying to experiencing new things together. And the third one is your deep feelings of attachment, your attachment, and that deals with oxytocin. So this is why remaining in physical contact is so important. That's like playing footsies underneath the table when you're eating, when you're watching like Netflix or something like that, sitting next to each other, like touching one another. And also having deep conversations releases oxytocin as well. And then we also know the fact that when it comes to a spike in oxytocin is during climax, right? Especially for the woman. That's the reason why it's such a bonding thing. That's why women have to be careful about who they have an orgasm with, because that bonding becomes then a little irrational to a certain extent, because now we're talking about biology, right? And so that's why it's important. Yeah. But I did want to, I do want to get to the questions in our group, and also
let's do that.
So let me do the questions, and then we can go ahead and do that. So just really in terms of safety, the questions around am I safe would be things like, am I safe? Are you safe? And is our relationship safe? Right? That's really important for like these young people to think about. And so men need to understand that women think about their physical safety a lot. So that means that if you're on a blind date or you've just met someone on Tinder, a woman's thinking like, is this man going to kill me? Like the women talk to each other this way. That's why women say like, after 15 minutes, I'm going to message you or you're going to message me. So I'm going to tell you, yes, I'm safe. I mean, that's how much these women think about it in terms of strategy. And there are even apps to help with these things. That's how important safety is. So men need to understand, because they are physically stronger, or generalization, most men are physically more stronger and physically faster because of their testosterone that happen in utero, and then also during puberty. When men need to have that conscious awareness, and also women need to understand that men's communication levels sometimes do require some assistance. That when a man says I don't know, he might actually not know. So when it comes to, this is the reason why, because men don't always have that priority in terms of communication, men will then look for cues, physical cues. So we need to understand that when it comes to, there's this thing called arousal non-concordance. And what that means is that what happens in the body and your actual desire, there may actually be a mismatch. So that means An erection might not mean the fact that you want to have sex. It just might mean the fact that something sexual is stimulating the brain. When a woman is wet, it doesn't mean they want to have sex. It just means the fact that they see that something's related to sex. So the psychological and the biological, there needs to be an understanding. If not, then people might get into situations where they're like, oh, she wanted it because of this, or he wanted it because of this. It's not true. It's really important to understand that.
It's very important.
Yes, extremely. So I'm going to read something. These are maybe more challenging for the audience, so just a heads up.
Okay.
So dealing with being sexually coerced, and again, these are from college students, again, 18 to 25, right? We're thinking about that. Many times my boyfriend forced me into having sex when I didn't want to. He thought that kissing always led to sex, and when I said no, he would become very angry, right? So this again goes to the idea of where's the communication. I'm really big into sexual communication,
Right.
because I believe the fact that we're not mind readers, and now we know that because of arousal non-concordance, we're not even like.
And that's part of being an adult. Communicate.
Exactly. Respect, right?
Own your feelings, communicate them.
Exactly. Here's another one. This is a person who actually was coercing a woman. So again, heads up. And it does have the R word in there too. I've sometimes had to work a little harder to get a woman in the mood, but that's not rape. That's seduction. Trust me, if a woman lets you take her out, flirts with you, sits close to you, lets you walk her to the door, she wants it. Women can't come right out and admit it because they're afraid they'll look bad. I can always tell though, if I'm walking her to the door, I know I'm getting some. The idea that I can always tell is arrogance, it's ego, it's an overestimation of what the women want. And so that's what we don't want to happen. It's not, that's not respect. It's not humanity. It's not, there's so many things. So, here's another one. Sometimes this is a person who was coerced. Sometimes I would not be in the mood, and he would say that things like his balls would explode if I didn't let him, or that he'd leave me and find a better girlfriend. So you hear the coercion, even the emotional coercion. Usually I just give in because it was easier to continue to argue. This idea of it's easier to continue is an idea of compliance. So even though it might not be like, people usually say consent is just a yes or no, but this is where we need to listen, not just for the words, but also actively listen to the other communication cues, right? It's really important when it comes to that safety piece. So yeah, so, and this last one, I saved this for last in terms, and this is the last one about the sexual coercion. And this was really challenging to read. Again, this comes from these college students. It says, I raped a girl in college. He says, at the time, I didn't realize what I had done. I thought it was consensual. We were drinking and I was hammered. I remember thinking she was hot. I got her back into my room and made a move on her, get her clothes off and had sex, passed out. Fast forward a year and I ran into her at a reunion. She tells me that night changed her life, that she didn't want to be with me, but I held her down, took off her clothes and raped her. She had to go to therapy and is still messed up. I truly thought it was consensual. If we can all just take a deep breath on that one.
Yeah, really.
But this idea of we were drinking. So when it comes to alcohol and drugs and things like that, this is where it's harder for people to make decisions, true consensual decisions. And that's why when the first question of, am I safe? Are you safe? Is our relationship safe? And even if you're not in a dating relationship, then are you still safe, right? Like, are you looking out for the person's, their brains are constantly thinking, am I safe? Do I matter? So we need to honor that. So
right. Definitely. Wow.
Yeah, Dehanna, do you mind if I move on to the second?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. So the second question, significance, do I matter?
Yeah.
Do you matter? And does our relationship matter? This idea of mattering, of being valued, this is where dignity comes in. So this is where the Taoists were amazing. Oh my gosh, they were so amazing. So the Chinese cosmology is based off of sexuality. So in the beginning was the formless Tai Chi, the great ultimate. And then Yang exploded. Think about the Big Bang, right? So the Yang energy is the movement, right? Is the action. And then when it paused, Yin was born. And then Yin and Yang mated and created the Tao. And from the Tao came the 10,000 things. So it's a very like harmonious and balanced way of looking at things. So here's an ancient Taoist, a sexologist. These texts were lost for like 900 years, but I love this, by the way. It's so exciting to share with everybody.
I like it too.
The Tao of copulating with a woman starts with lingering frolic and play and continues until she harmoniously in spirit and moved in thought. Only after extended play should intercourse begin. And I love this. And on Monday, you had mentioned on Monday, I had a long conversation in the after chat. And I thought, if I were to have a retreat and I wanted men to understand their wives, what I would do is do you know what a slip and slide is?
Mm-hmm.
A summer toy where people put a plastic and then you run.
Yeah, right.
Men get on a slip and slide without water, with nothing, and just try to slip down that thing. And have them remember the burn on their chest, and then do it with the water, and then ask themselves, which one was a more pleasurable experience for you? So next time you try to engage your wife or your significant other, remember how important it is for you to make sure the sprinklers are on. So the Chinese, because I know a lot of times when people think of the Taoists, they think in terms of energy and health and recycling energy, things like that. But really the third branch of that is female pleasure. And female pleasure to me is why I think that the Taoists were like amazing, absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing from a ancient Chinese teacher. The Tao of sexual intercourse should act leisurely, evenly, and gradually. Harmony is most valued.
Mm.
So mutual pleasure as a goal. It's not about just taking, because that's not how we want to be. And so and the third question, are you feeling pleasure?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or am I feeling pleasure? Are we both feeling pleasure? So in our brains, there's something called the dual control module. And basically what that means is that there are brakes and there's a gas. And everyone is a little bit different. So in other words, a brake would be things that maybe inhibit you to get into certain situations. And then your gas is about things that would then motivate you. And so most people fall into maybe this 80%. There are people that are asexual or aromantic, which they are not interested in romance and they're not interested in sex. And then there are outliers. And then the other would be like people that are into poly, right? Multiple partners. That's also more of a, low brake, high gas pedal. But for a lot of us, we're actually in this in between. And so it's really important to understand that, especially because the fact that for women, context is everything. If there's any guys listening to what I'm saying today, understand context. Context means the situation that you're in, right? If I told you that someone, if I told you someone came to my house, well, the context of whether or not I invited them to my house, when they barged into my house, all of those things matter. So when we talk about the 3 key questions, make sure that you have all 3 keys. You need those 3 keys to open the door. So it doesn't feel like someone just barging into your situation. Right. That's not what you want. So that's the reason why when it comes to modern science, this is super embarrassing to say out loud because it shocked me so much. But when we talk about things like how Columbus discovered the New World in 1492, right? But obviously that's not true because the Native Americans were here, right? Not to say that scientists discovered this because it's not true, but did you know when the clitoris was discovered? Discovered in quotes, 2009, 14 years ago. 14 years ago when they realized that it was not just the tip of the iceberg, but the iceberg had a lot more ice underneath the water. 2009. We have already been to the moon. We've already created so this is the reason why the amount of energy that we put into understanding female pleasure, it is shocking.
What about the Kinsey report? I mean, that's 1940s.
Right, but when we're talking about the actual extension of the organ itself, because the clitoris is not just the tip, it's not just the visible part, right. But it's underneath. Kinsey was looking at more in terms of what were people's sex lives like, right? That's what they were. And then masters and masters were looking at more of some of the biology. But now when you really look at the biology, women's body is so sensitive.
So the anatomy of
Anatomy.
the
Yes, the
female,
full now anatomy,
yeah,
but the internal anatomy is what people did not realize. So
right.
again, understanding female anatomy is important.
Yeah.
Understand the difference between male and female's brains is important. Understanding the three brain systems is important. Understanding the fact that there was a time where the ancient Chinese Taoists had this idea that it's a dance between the man and the woman. And the Taoists get very specific about how do you know a woman is aroused, and a lot of it is visual cues, but not just the genitals. It's like the blushing in their eyes, how she's breathing. There's all these other cues.
Right.
So that's the reason why, like, I'm so after reading these texts, I was like, oh man, I'm so proud to be Chinese in this area. It was like it's so that's really
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, definitely. I think it's wonderful. That's such a beautiful part of the heritage of what the Chinese have offered the whole planet.
Yeah, and because it was buried for so long, this is why I think the fact that there
Uh-huh.
is a renaissance for even the modern Chinese, because I've shared this with a bunch of Asians and they did not know this. And I think
Right.
even in China that this is not the case either because of communism coming in the
Yeah.
40s.
Yeah.
So this is the
Yeah.
reason why I think it's a great time for us to have a renaissance, a new
Yeah.
renaissance and
Right.
looking back at these texts. So yeah.
I want to open the floor to questions. I know that all the audience on the after chat on Monday were so enthralled with
Yeah.
Shay and asking him questions. We wanted to open the floor. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. I just wanted to ask you, Shay. I mean, we've been talking about male, female
Yeah.
together, sexuality. How is the research for homosexuals, same sex?
Yeah, so
Humans and
Yeah, so when it comes to men, there is
mhm.
more research for that. Part of it is the fact that they're more open to talking about things.
Gay
Les
men.
Gay men, yeah, when it comes to lesbians, they are a little bit more shy to talk about things. So
Oh,
the main thing to know between men and women in that case is that when it comes to a gay man is it's more fixed in terms of like a man who's attracted to men. Uh, some of that brain stuff is just it is what it is. While a woman's brain, women are more sexually fluid because of context. So
mm,
because of that, it is possible for a woman to be married to a man like Steph's story, and then later on also discover the fact that no, I'm not saying that Steph didn't always have, desire for women, but I'm just saying in general, the idea is that women are more fluid. Elizabeth Gilbert in Eat, Pray, Love, she was with a woman later on. So there's a fluidity to it. But when it comes
mhm.
to men, part of it is just because it's what you're attracted to. Now, keep in mind though, what's interesting about gay men is the fact that the gay men are attracted to masculinity.
Right.
They are more willing to also be more submissive at times than a heterosexual man. So there's a brain system that deals with being submissive and then also being more dominant.
But
So
isn't the male gay brain different than the male straight brain?
yes, it
Right.
is. And the reason why is because there is a submissive quality to it, and there is a heterosexual man is attracted to feminine sexual cues, while a gay man will be attracted to masculine sexual cues. So that's a huge difference. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes sense. I
yeah.
haven't seen an actual, let's see if here's a question. Please talk about masturbation.
Oh, yes, that's a great topic. So,
Yeah.
so I am totally pro masturbation. I mentioned on Monday that I was in a, very conservative space, and I remember being wow, this is so vulnerable sharing this. I remember being in youth group and then wanting to share my struggle in that area, but I never had the courage to do that with my youth minister. And then when I was in college, I actually had the courage and I shared it with one of my church leaders, and he told me that it was selfish, it was sinful, it was
Wow.
having sex with yourself, and it was not easy to open up that way and get that kind of response. So I believe that if any kind of abstinence kind of desire in a person, it's important to couple that with self-pleasuring. I believe that masturbation is really important to understand your own body, especially for women, I would say, because men's genitalia is on the outside, so it's easy to see, but women ought to get to know their own bodies. So in terms of like sexual education in general, when it comes to like the government, masturbation, I believe that it needs to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah.
then during the Clinton administration, the person who was in charge of sex ed actually said that masturbation needs to be part of
Yeah.
sex ed.
I
And
remember that. Yeah.
she got kicked out because of that.
Yeah, I remember that discrepancy,
Yeah.
and it's so prevalent for women's masturbation with vibrators,
Yes.
on the market. Gwyneth Paltrow has, a whole slew of different types, and talking about sexuality and women's pleasuring themselves with those different vibrators, and I mean,
Right.
it's
So
just. Go ahead.
that's the reason why when it comes to men sometimes get intimidated if they think that they're bringing a toy. And this is where men have to let go of their egos and not make it all about them. Because
Right.
so a lot of times men will just think in terms of erection, ejaculation, penetration, all these things. We have to widen the lens on sex. By widening the lens on sex, then we allow it to not just be about that moment in time. Because even the word climax, when we talk about the climax of a story, well, it's the buildup, it's the journey as well, and it's also the afterglow. It's the cuddling afterwards. It's all of that. So
Right. That's intimacy.
yeah,
Yeah.
that again was intimacy.
We need to talk about the intimacy, not just the act of actual penetration and sexual.
Am I safe? Do I matter? And then am I feeling pleasure? It's all
Right.
three of those things, right? Not just
Right.
the performance of it.
Right. Okay, let me look for another question here. That was really important subject. I'm glad that we brought that to the table. Okay. I guess there is a TED Talk. Do you know about this? Sexuality, Cliteracy by Sophie Wallace.
I may have watched. Yeah, I think I may have seen that. I've watched a lot of documentaries or a lot of TED Talks on sex.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not seeing an actual. Let's see.
Can I post something really quick before I forget? So
yeah.
I'm going to post something in the chat that just says, I did a presentation when we did our practice on neurowiring, intimacy, safety, significance, and pleasure. Oh my. If people who would like to get access to that, I'm opening that up until, during this week while we are sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. But basically, on www.sexualintelligenceissexy.com, if people want to just, give me their emails and I can go ahead and send that to them. I'll put that in the chat. Just, yeah. There you go.
Also, here's a question. We had talked about Montauk Chia's work, Shay.
Yes.
And somebody was asking about what's your take on Harley Swifter? Regan? Do you know who that is? I don't know
who that is. So I'm glad that someone mentioned that. I'm still as well. But
Montauk Chia as well.
Montauk Chia's work, a lot of it is more of the traditional Chinese, the physical aspect of it, right? And so dealing with recycling of energy. And honestly, I'm a novice in so many of those areas.
Yeah.
But I would say that those people who are into the health piece, definitely check him out. I think when it comes to the 18 to 25-year-olds, I think having access to him might feel a little bit, there might be a generation gap, and there also maybe feel like a cultural gap. And so I think that when it comes to communication, I think that it focuses more on almost like the Tai Chi version of the sexuality. I could be wrong. He may delve more deeply with the communication. But
I did a workshop. I mean, I witnessed a talk with Montauk Chia live with Alex. Yeah, with Alex Gray in New York when I lived in New York. Yeah. And everybody, if you don't know Alex Gray's work, he was this incredible artist that did these energetic paintings that were, the anatomy of the energy anatomy with all these, different. And so they had a discussion about sexuality. And so I saw him live talk about it. It is about really more utilizing the energy of your sexuality and then rotating it and moving it in a tantric circle, if you know tantric sexual ideation, so to speak. But it is really electric. It's the electromagnetic energy of our body. I mean, even Mother Teresa talked about her sexuality, bringing that energy up into her heart. and then
Yeah.
expanding it out into her compassion and love for other human beings. So there is I mean, it's the primordial energy in us, right? It's
exactly.
creation,
Yes.
that energy, and monks and people who have chosen to have a chase, commitment, if they do so, where do they channel that energy, right? They channel it up into the spiritual parts of their energy centers. The heart was Mother Teresa's focus with that particular
well, this is the reason why you can have a sexual experience with someone that is based more on the energetic, because you're turning them on, they're turning you on, and sometimes even without the touch. And yet sometimes you can have a touch experience and feel like there was no intimacy, right? Like you go through an encounter, was like that didn't have any meaning to it. There was not even a real genuine exchange. So
no, Alex Gray is amazing, and he is alive. And I went to his new space once he left New York City, which he was there for years on the lower west side with amazing amount of every a full moon. People would gather and they would do dance and meditation, and then the upstate space was completely different, where he had much more space. And he's an extraordinary presence on the planet.
I love meeting people like that. In fact, I met John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and he had a sex talk.
Well, talk about that a little bit. I think we have a little bit more. I think Jim, we may have to bring Jim in a little bit.
Okay.
But
let me just say two questions from John Gray, just really quick.
Yes.
After John Gray's so many years of marriage therapy, he says he boils down to two things. Women will, in terms of wanting a divorce, women will say, "I give and I give and I give and I get nothing in return," and then men say, "Nothing I do makes her happy." I believe the fact that if we can increase fulfilling lovemaking, then the women will feel more like I give and I give and I give and I get something in return. And then when it comes to men feeling like they are very, very manly because they can satisfy their significant others or wives. So, hey, Jim.
Wonderful. Hi, Jim. Welcome back.
Hi, Dehanna. Hi, Shay. Thank you so much. Time and time again, I always go back to the Taoists and the Tao Te Ching.
Yes.
Think of all the great traditions. The Taoists are the only ones, at least that I know about, that truly reflect over time the primordial wisdom of staying in alignment with nature.
Yes.
And if you think about Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism, they're basically all embarrassed or unsure or downright resistant of natural sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
But the Taoists, from the very beginning, have honored sexuality as part of the natural, as part of the Tao.
Right.
And therefore, as you were reading, these texts go back thousands of years.
Yes.
They were nothing in modern times has superseded the ancient wisdom of the Tao with regards to intimacy and sexuality. And I think it's due to the fact that the Taoists are the only one of the great religious traditions that kept their antenna on nature rather than some transcendental God or disembodied nirvana or whatever. Yeah. And so I'm delighted that you draw from that tradition, because in my mind, it's the deepest. Because
I love that. I think what's really cool is that when they look at nature, they're looking at the practical. The Taoists are pragmatic about it. It's like almost when you think of martial arts, they looked at how animals were fighting and they incorporate that. And I think that when it comes to sexuality, they were looking at this is what nature is doing, so let's like really get good at it. Right? So that's why. And then what's interesting is, like, as I'm doing my research, and they're like, people are so embarrassed to, no one's like sitting in the bedroom taking notes on your performance and things like that. So that's why when Kinsey did it was such a big deal. But what people don't realize is that when it comes to the Forbidden Palace in China, when the emperors were trying to have an heir. Oh no, did it crash?
No, it didn't. You're fine.
Oh, okay, did okay. And so when the
I think it's me.
Oh, it was you. It was you.
I
Okay.
use my internet for I don't know what
Oh, I
reason.
see. No, but the eunuchs would take notes. They would write the number of thrusts and the depth of the thrust to like measuring things. And the reason they were doing that is because they were wanting to make sure there was an error for the emperor. And so that's the reason why when it comes to scientific inquiry, the Chinese were very nerdy about sex. They were like very nerdy about it. And because of that, I think that this is where going back to those thousands of years you're talking about, Jim, is so much information that we can glean from. Now, granted, is there still a patriotic tone to it? Yes. Is there still some modernization that we need to do based off of current brain science? Of course. But like you're saying, the idea of mutuality, the idea of harmony, right? That is huge because that's where the balance comes in.
And I raise this because I think culturally, there's a reason why Americans and people in the West in general are so sexually dysfunctional. Is because the very religious and spiritual tradition that has shaped Western civilization,
yes,
been predicated on a negation of the body,
yes,
ordination of women, complete ignoring of other sentient beings, because we're supposed to be focused on some abstract transcendental God up there. And don't sleep with your hands under the covers because you want to make sure you go to heaven when you die.
Right. Yes. And in fact, actually, when the British went into India and they brought, because India had their tantra, and because of the Victorian paradigm, it made the Indians very, very confused. So this is the reason why I think you're right. I think the shame of the body, even when it comes to ancient Judeo-Christian scriptures and things like that, I believe Dr. Mario Martinez talks about the 3 archetypal wounds: shame, abandonment, and betrayal. And I believe that sexual shame is something that ought to be healed. When we talk about humanity rising, this is what my desire is. My desire is the fact that we reduce to eliminate trafficking, especially when it comes to children, when it comes to young child brides, when it comes to the exploitation of women in the marketplace, when it comes to any kind of sexual coercion in terms of the workplace and politics. We have to do all of that and still give people a replacement. Because what happens is when you just tell people they're wrong, or you shame men for their sexuality but don't give them an option, you're actually cornering people to then act out in really
even more. Yeah,
exactly. That's why we need to offer them. This is a healthier, more conscious way. Thank you, Dehanna, of way of looking at it. And Jim, thank you so much for honoring the Taoists. I mean, really, that for me, when you said that, I just got chill. What do you call that, Dehanna?
Dopamine hit.
A dopamine,
dopamine chill.
I had dopamine chills all because, Jim, as someone who's not ethnically Chinese, for you to say it and honor that way, I'm telling you, like it warms my heart. Thank you. I really appreciate you for that.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Wow, and 2 males bonding over it. I love it. Oh, you guys are precious.
That might be a nice note with which to close. Just a nice moment of male bonding over the Tao.
Over the Tao. Well, I bow down to everyone in this conversation because it's a sensitive topic, and it's so imperative for us to be healthy human beings, is to have a healthy connection to our sexuality and feeling comfortable in our skins. And whichever decision we make, we're all adults here, and that's what we're trying to give the adulting, population that's learning about their desires and not putting them into a shame corner, like you said, Shay. It's so important to honor everybody's, instincts, and just come to the table and be honest in a conversation about your sexuality. Own who you are. And come to the table, and what kind of expression do you want? At that age, a lot of them, they don't know. They don't really know. They're forming and shaping who they're going to be and the trajectory of their entire life and their sexuality.
Yeah.
But it's the most potent, that intimacy, the oxytocin, when you connect with another human being and bond with them, there's nothing as euphoric, as that. So I really honor you, Shay, for bringing this subject to the forefront. And I know this particular audience and the after chat on Monday was just like, so interested in how deep it went. I mean, I think you stayed on an extra hour and a half or something. It was insane.
Like 2.5 hours, though.
So it's a subject that, honestly, everybody, I have watched Shay now for, I think we've known each other not even a year. And even the people in our church at Unity, the women that have, not had that dialogue ever and that safe space to talk about it in their 70s and 80s. And, you've shared so many stories that is so brilliant. I'm so honored to know you as a person that they can really reflect, parts of their intimate self for the first time in dialogue with somebody about it. It's just so extraordinary. But let me move on to tomorrow. This Adulting Alliance, I've been so honored with each of you. Tomorrow is the divine, beautiful Anasuya that we are going to be in the presence of, who opened up with a prayer, benediction, invocation. And she also is an expert in the Black Madonna, which I know, Jim, you really love going to Chartres every year. So I have a feeling she's going to teach you some more about the Black Madonna. So this is really cool when I first met her. And it's about connecting to the divinity in us all. Whether you believe in God, you're agnostic or on the fence as or atheist. Agnostic is on the fence. My son's an agnostic. He's like, I don't know if I believe or not. So it is a discussion to talk about what you feel is your divine nature and taking agency of that. And Black and brown girls, what they're up against. I think that's an important subject that Anasuya will bring to the table tomorrow as a discussion. And so we're looking so forward to bringing her into the fold.
Thank you, Dehanna. Thank you, Shay.
Thank you,
that'll bring us to a close for today. You're all welcome to the after session chat. I hope Dehanna and Shay, you'll join for at least a few minutes. You'll see the link in the chat box, and we'll see you then tomorrow for the 4th session in our Adulting Alliance. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.